Australians interested in trading cannabis stocks has gone to a whole new level in 2019. Stake, which is a trading platform for US stocks via Australia, has recorded exponential growth in the space, with nearly 10% of all stock trades in marijuana names this year.
Yeah, Matt Leibowitz, who joins us often from Stake, is he kind of alerted us to these numbers, and they do seem to be a complete standout. I mean, in comparison, less than about 3% of all trades are in big name stocks like Apple and Amazon. So there is something in this. Mark Bernberg is getting in on the action. He's launching Australia's first cannabis investment consultancy, the Green Fund. He joins us now. Good to have you in studio, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
What would an investment consultancy, cannabis investment consultancy do? What's its role?
So we see our role at the Green Fund as just being able to educate Australians and a global market. We have quite a global database. Just educating them on cannabis, on the industry. What does medicinal cannabis mean? A lot of people think medicinal cannabis makes you high. It doesn't. And just also, educating people on the various companies that are available and the investment opportunities.
Right. And how's it going? How's your platform been growing?
We've seen crazy growth. Our traffic is doubling month on month, every single month. And our database is growing by about 2,000–3,000 every month. People are really interested in this.
And this is an Australian-specific kind of community you've got.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So we've got a lot of following coming out of Canada and the US, obviously, because there's a lot of action there. But predominantly, it's Australians, sort of 25 to 45. And the interesting part is most of these people have never bought a share before, and they've heard pot stocks.
Well, they want pot stocks to be the first go at the share market.
100%.
Really?
You'd be surprised, yeah.
Doesn't that suggest to you it's kind of just a crazy bubble or something that, like Bitcoin, like everyone suddenly wants to get on Bitcoin even though they've never invested before? I don't know, it just has that feel about it at the moment.
We get that a lot. Everybody seems to think that it's the new crypto. It's not. You've got companies doing like Canopy Growth doing $100 million in a quarter. There's real companies with real employees, proper production. And the thing is that I think it is still very much a retail market at the moment. I think institutional coverage of the stocks themselves around the globe is limited. And I think, especially with it being illegal at the federal level in the US, there's a hesitancy for big institutional funding to come in. And so it is being driven primarily by a retail market and primarily by that sort of age bracket, which is also the age bracket that is most in favor of legalizing, cannabis.
Recreationally?
Yeah, for sure.
I think I've read previously you say that eventually a globally regulated cannabis market is inevitable. What makes you say that, and what kind of time horizon do you have on that?
So what you've seen globally is that when a country legalizes medicinal cannabis, it is the tipping point for an eventual move towards recreational cannabis. Because what medicinal cannabis does is it breaks the stigma. What have we had? About 100 years of really hardcore propaganda telling people this is the devil's drug, the gateway drug. If you smoke a joint, you're going to be on heroin tomorrow. And a lot of doctors have no idea at the moment about cannabis because it wasn't in the medical syllabus, and they weren't able to access it for research. So the stigma is broken with medicinal cannabis as more efficacy results are brought out, and more people that you would never expect are starting to try medicinal cannabis and really seeing the benefits. That leads to people's mindset changing, which again sort of makes it a slightly more socially acceptable, which brings down the barriers to people that are against legalization, which then does end result in governments realizing this is a big money spinner for them.
Right, I suppose to the sort of the second part of that question, the time horizon here, there's a few things going on, isn't there? Because there's medicinal cannabis, which you were just talking about there. There's recreational cannabis, which is in a way a whole different kettle of fish. And then there's also non-THC related hemp products that are finding their way into food and things like that. So when you're talking to Australian investors, what are they interested in? What are they talking about now?
I think everybody's always interested in the recreational market. It's just going to be so big. Bigger than beer is what the Budweiser ex-marketing exec said. He thinks it's bigger than beer. So everybody kind of has this fantasy or romance about what recreational could be. But Australian investors should be looking at the medicinal market, because I think Australia is a good 5 years away from legalizing for recreational use. And I think it's going to be driven by what we see in North America, particularly the US. And there's a huge opportunity for medicinal cannabis and the growth that can be seen. We have about 3,000 registered Australian patients right now. Prohibition Partners reckon that's 450,000 by 2028, which is hyperbolic growth in terms of patient numbers. And so I think Australian investors, there's a huge opportunity in the next couple of years just in the medicinal market, and that's where the focus should be, because I think Australian, as a conservative nation, is probably a little bit off recreational. I think it's a bit much for a lot of people.
Sure, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, whatever it might be, when you're talking to Australian investors about this sort of thing through your platform, is it very out in the open that this is a speculative type of investment?
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely. I think any investor that is thinking about getting into cannabis needs to understand, you know, if we were to consider this as a baseball game, we're probably in the second, maybe third innings. It's early. You know, 4 of the biggest countries and economies in the world still don't have medicinal cannabis legal at the federal level. It is very speculative, it's very opportunistic, and most importantly, it is so volatile.
Yes, exactly.
You don't bat an eyelid if you're in the game of seeing a stock drop 40% in a day.
Yes.
It's just, it goes with the territory.
And with those necessary disclaimers, what are some of the stocks that people are really mad about at the moment?
I think everybody globally is very mad about Canopy Growth. They're kind of seen as the doyen of the industry, and certainly Bruce Linton is a rock star when it comes to, you know, corporate cannabis. You know, I think the big ones get the most attention. You know, Tilray, which is just the craziest thing that ever happened. You know, Tilray, Kronos, Aurora and Canopy are some of the big ones that I think have huge volume traded on a daily basis.
Yeah, and when you talk about volatility, I suppose something like Canada legalising recreational cannabis use in, I think it was October last year, did everything just soar then and then something else counterweighted that? I mean, what are the big events here?
It's funny you say that, because everybody thought, right, October 17, it's going legal, pot stocks are going to go mental. But we've been saying for a long time at the Green Fund that the Canadian model for legalisation was terrible. You know, first of all, very limited numbers of actual physical retail locations. So you're asking people who've never really maybe entered the market to come online and buy for the first time. And also they only legalised it with flower, you know, the actual, what you showed earlier on the TV, the cannabis, and low potency oil. So if that was liquor, it would be, imagine that you only had beer and it was only light beer. That was post-prohibition. It's not hellishly exciting. So when the numbers weren't as great and when the supply kept running out and the stores kept closing, you know, investors ran.
It's interesting, isn't it? The numbers that we're seeing over at our mates at Stake are pretty incredible. 10% of all trades in cannabis stock. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And as you say, it's very much
a wild bunch out there, aren't they?
Oh, they are. And this is it seems to be pretty much this window of people, 26 to, I think you said mid-40s.
Mid-40s, yeah.
Is that pretty much the only people who are trading in this area?
I think you've got the outliers. We see a bell curve. You know, you get the younger and you get the older, but predominantly it's that 25 to 45. Funny enough, it's a lot of women. It's about 60 to 40. In terms of our readership and in terms of the people that we see. And, you know, this is the age where they are most in favour of legalisation. They are the ones that are probably most passionate about it. And that passion leads them to want to be part of the green rush. And so you are seeing this, we're seeing it in the growth of the site and the traffic.
Fascinating stuff. The green rush, the green wave. Fantastic. Mark Bernberg, investment strategist and founder of the Green Fund. Thank you very much for helping us understand it.
Thanks for having me, guys.